need to give it access to your writing samples, train it on your brand voice characteristics, cadence. I literally have talked about just cadence before for an hour and how you can train ChatGPT, because that's the number one thing consumers are going to know if you are over-reliant on generative AI.
Hey everyone, this is Mark DeGrasse, the president of Digital Marketer, and this is the podcast that keeps you updated on everything you need to know when it comes to digital marketing, from the platforms you'd be focused on to the cutting-edge tactics and tools that are working today. Today our guest is Jordan Wilson, the founder and CEO of Accelerant Agency and the host of Everyday AI, which I have actually gone on and really enjoyed. So Jordan knows his stuff. Today we're kind of talking about what you could use AI for immediately to enhance your marketing, because shockingly, we talked right before this and mentioned several companies that you would think had AI just dialed in and have never even touched it. So, welcome, Jordan.
Hey, Mark, thank you for having me. I'm excited to return the favor. It was great to have you on my show. So I'm so excited. This is been listening to the podcast for the longest time. So super excited to be on this end and speaking on AI. It's exciting. So yeah, let's get into it.
I love that. Yeah, it's always nice, talking to somebody who uses it all the time, finds it not terrifying or offensive, because a lot of people are, oh, you used AI for blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, I also used a hammer when I built my chicken coop.
That's right. I forgot the chicken coop. Man, I got to put that on life goals. I got to put that on after AI, small farm, right?
It's terrible. I'm building a spaceship too, but everybody talks about chicken coop. All right, so let's just talk about just kind of why we see it. Because I think for me, I started using AI seriously back in December. So even then, even though I'm in marketing, I teach marketing, I'm still relatively new to it as well. And I think just seeing that and the fact that I'm kind of a futurist and I love tech and AI from all the stories I read, it's still pretty new. So why don't we just start with why is it still new, even though everybody's talking about it, to a lot of business people, but even marketers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that marketers are always early adopters of technology, right? It's the nature of, if you're a marketer, that's what you have to do. If you're not early, you're going to have, clients or coworkers or a boss seeing examples of what other big companies are doing. So it's, as someone that has a background in marketing, I understand that. And you never want to miss out, and you see, great marketing initiatives or advertising campaigns that other bigger companies or creative agencies are working on. And a lot of times you reverse engineer it and you find out kind of the tools or the processes that people are using. And I think AI is the same, right? I think we at Accelerant first started using GPT tech the week it was announced, right? Which I believe it was commercially available in late 2020. You had all these, GPT-3 at the time tools, what used to be called Jarvis and Copy AI. And as someone with a journalism background, it was natural for, the journalist / marketer in me to immediately start using these GPT tools, at the time, and seeing where they are at now, they were almost primitive, right?
Yeah. Well,
if I'm being honest, right? Yeah. And I look at what you can accomplish, even just if we're just looking at the GPT technology, what you can accomplish with it now versus, what you could in late 2020 or early 2021. I mean, you can't, the two won't even recognize each other. But yeah, as marketers, you're always kind of, first to the party. But I still feel, even with that, there's so few people, even in marketing, advertising, communications, that are taking advantage of it on a daily basis, which to me is kind of wild.
Yeah, well, I think, for us, we've been doing it for a while, and it's now become part of the process. It's now Google for me, where I'm like, no, I could do a search and get a bunch of stupid results, or I can ask a much more specific question and get an exact result that I know. And this is the funny part, because a lot of people say, isn't the AI answered biased? And I always say, isn't every person on the planet biased? And you're just getting a result based on a big company's algorithm and a bunch of individuals' information. And that's you think that's better?
Yeah, it's funny because it reminds me of people who self-diagnose a medical issue with Google. And they're like, oh, it looks like I have, A, B, and C ailment. It's like, no, you don't. It just means that that company had the best SEO, right? But yeah, it is funny because, people who say those things are, oh, how could you, entrust this process to AI? Isn't that dangerous? Shouldn't you research it? It's like, okay, let me weigh those two options then. I can go down the deepest, darkest rabbit hole for hours on end to find that one nugget of information, or I can give a generative AI tool like ChatGPT or Google Bard, I could give that a shot first to see if I could find that thing at the end of the rabbit hole. And if not, you can always go down and dive. But if you know what you're doing inside a large language model, it's very hard, honestly, to return back to traditional, searching or even traditional research.
Oh, it's impossible. I've tried it where I'm just like, yeah, I could find some answers and whatever, but this is qualified. And now you have things like, Perplexity or Elicit or a bunch of other AIs that could do, much more refined work than you could do before. And so, yeah, I think it's just like anything else, it's fear. People are scared. They're scared that, well, at this point, you might be scared that you don't know how to use it, because that's one of the things I tell people where it's, if you talk to someone, ChatGPT is amazing, and then they go use it and they're like, it didn't do anything for me. I typed in a prompt, it gave me a basic answer, blah, blah, blah. And you want to say like, the AI is not basic. You're basic. And that literally was a bad question. But nobody wants to hear that either.
It's funny you bring that up, because I think it was actually me seeing one too many of those posts in I don't know, January or February, shortly after ChatGPT was, released. It was seeing those people be like, oh, look how bad AI is. That I'm like at that time I had been using it obviously for, a year and a half, 2 years through these other programs. And that's actually what led me to start, which is aggressive, a daily podcast and newsletter to educate people, because these were smart people that had high levels of influence in the business community, putting out just blatantly wrong and just ill-informed content surrounding AI. And it's like almost once you've been through it and you truly understand how to get the most out of any generative AI program, and then you hear people say like, oh no, this AI stinks, look at this. Yeah, it's like what you said, Mark. It's like the program's not wrong. You are just extremely wrong in your approach and your lack of educating yourself.
Yeah, well, and just trying. And it does take some time, a little bit of effort, just like any skill that's useful. Nothing you try immediately besides AI is super helpful right off the bat. So I figure what we could do today is kind of, address that crew, and also just marketers in general, a business owner that wants to get into using AI, and just kind of give maybe 3 scenarios of a situation that if you used AI in this situation, common everyday task, you could 10x your speed, the quality of the content, the content itself. So I figure we just start there. So right off the bat, where do you think a marketer could, employ AI to enhance a process that they might do all the time?
Number one is training. And I'm just going to use, if it's fine, so we don't have to jump all over the place, let's just use the example of ChatGPT, right? It is probably the most popular Gen AI tool by far, at least if you look at any metric out there. But I'd say the number one thing is to train ChatGPT on your voice or your company's voice. That's first and foremost. And to do that, there is a whole process, and we teach people this, but it's give ChatGPT access to the information that it needs. If you're not spending the 20, I'm not paid by OpenAI to say this, but if you're not spending the $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus to have plugins, if you're for some reason like, that's a waste,
I need another Netflix or Prime or Hulu or Apple. I can't do.
Yeah, it's like, Mark, I speak for literally an hour a day on AI. And that part right there leaves me at a loss for words. Like people who refuse to be like, oh, it's $20. Well, anyways, once you spend $20, you have the world's most powerful generative AI at your fingertips. But the number one thing I would say is to train AI on your voice or your company's voice, give it access to writing samples, but you have to also train it. That's not putting in one super long prompt. You need to give it access to your writing samples, train it on your brand voice characteristics, cadence. I literally have talked about just cadence before for an hour and how you can train ChatGPT, because that's the number one thing. Consumers are going to know if you are over-reliant on generative AI, whether it's in your content, whether it's in your content marketing, whether it's in your imagery, your social media posts, whatever it is. So you really have to put in the work up front to train ChatGPT to really take on your brand voice as if it were a trained writer on your team.
Nice. Hey everyone, I want to quickly interrupt the podcast for a special announcement. If you're listening to this podcast because you want to become a better marketer, then I want to share with you what I believe to be the most comprehensive digital marketing program on the market today. It's called the Digital Marketing Mastery Certification. You'll learn to leverage the tools and channels to predictably and profitably drive awareness, leads, sales, and referrals. Everything you need to know to become a true master of digital marketing. We'll take an in-depth look at the core digital marketing competencies, including content, email, social media, community, digital advertising, data and optimization, and more. After earning your digital marketing strategy certificate, you'll have the tools to effectively reach your target audience through a full scope marketing strategy. Get started today at digitalmarketer.com/strategy-cert. Okay, so they get ChatGPT. Hopefully they upgrade for the $20 so they could use the plugins. And now they could write essentially any piece of copy that you need for an individual brand after you train it. So for me, this could be, email. It could be a drip campaign. It could be a social media post. It could be a whole article if you want it to be. But basically train it first and you could generate whatever you want after you do the training.
Absolutely. And I think people always look at ChatGPT as a shortcut. And it is in the end, but you always upfront, you have to invest, 30 minutes upfront will save you many hours on the back end of fine tuning and tweaking. Get it right once. Obviously there's highly technical things that you have to keep in mind, token limits, and it's going to start to forget information, but spend time up front to get it right. It'll save you many hours on the back end. And then, like Mark, what you said, you can essentially then use it for anything. Yeah. Landing page copy, sales sequences, social media, anything, right? If you get that brand voice right.
Exactly. And so, the recommendation, if you're starting out, just the next task that you had on your list to do for a client, try train ChatGPT in their brand voice and their audience, and then have it do it, and then compare it with what you would have done, how long it would have taken, and what you get that draft with. And then even time, fixing the draft, what you'll find is that it'll be way, way faster. I say 10x, but it could be 50x. But even if it's twice, just twice as fast, something that would have taken you 4 hours took you 2 hours. What could that do for your business? Easy peasy. Yeah. So that's a good
huge
one. So what's another example that marketer or small business owner could use to kind of get into the process of using AI?
Yeah, I think that the first one, training AI on your voice, huge. The second one is research and analysis. I like to tell people when whether I'm consulting companies or individuals on how to use generative AI, is don't just look at the shiny thing out there and try to do what someone else is doing, or don't just use a generative AI tool because you can or because it's there. Literally go down and compartmentalize your day and into buckets and categories and say, this is where I'm spending the most time doing manual tasks. And usually it's two things. It's writing, which we already kind of covered. And then the other thing is research and analysis. So it's, we spend so much time, whether it's education or whether it's, researching competitors, analyzing, business trends or forecasting something in a certain vertical of business. But research and analysis is one of the most time consuming and manual tasks. And if I'm being honest, I mean, yeah, it's fun to learn new things, but especially if whatever in your role in marketing, if it's a lot of research and analysis, I know from experience, it can become so mundane, right? And if you train a chat within ChatGPT, and I should call this out, you shouldn't just go into the same chat all the time. You need to create different chats that are highly, like we call them expert chats, that are highly specialized and very good at one specific thing. So even to give you an example, Mark, like I have for, our everyday AI show, I have a chat every single day. That is the first thing I do. Usually while I'm waiting for my coffee, I sit down. It's a chat that I've trained. It essentially reads, 15 to 20 different sites that have all the different AI news. And it knows, because I've told it, hey, I don't care about, the highly technical things. I don't care about, some of these more fringe, wild. It's like, it knows exactly what I care about. It's like, I care about the big companies. I care about the big Gen AI tools that are out there. Oh, it's like, Microsoft is announcing something Thursday. Google Bard announced something, updates this morning. So like, just to keep up with that, the research and analysis, it would take an average person, I don't know, at least 5 to 10 hours to read those dozens or hundreds of articles. But I've trained ChatGPT to look at this list. Sometimes I'll even load in a large spreadsheet with different links for that day and, scrape and use automation and bring everything in there. And it knows right away what I care about and what I want to teach my audience. Not only that, but I've taught it as well how to give me a paragraph to summarize that so I understand it for my audience, right? So that right there, I can do in theory, right? This is an extreme example, but I would have to hire a full-time person to do that for me every single day. And it still wouldn't perform at the level that, my trained chat can perform.
No, on top of the fact that it wouldn't be as consistent, because I think a lot of times you think like, oh, I could train somebody to do that, but maybe that person's sick that day. Maybe they don't like you that day. Maybe they quit. And, and then you have a new person and you hope they'll do the same thing. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of AI is the consistency. Like, I know it might not be perfect, but that's fine because I know it might not be perfect. And I'll get the same thing every single time, or I'll get something very similar to it and I know what to expect. And so just having that alone is huge. And then I will say, just on your research, just so everybody knows, especially if you're new to ChatGPT, you could tell it to make tables for you. So let's say that you have to do a ton of research and you were going to have your VA fill out this giant spreadsheet and it was going to take all this copy and pasting. You could literally get the answer and tell it, in column 1, I want this. In column 2, I want that. And then you could copy and paste that in there. So, and then what you're saying is way even beyond that. So what you were talking about is actually using ChatGPT and plugins to execute the research using an Excel sheet that has a whole bunch of other links in it.
Yeah. I use, oh gosh, don't get me started on tools, Mark, because this will turn into a,
well, it's good
a
for
deep
people to
dive
understand.
3-hour podcast. But yeah, like giving it access to a spreadsheet, and I'll use a tool like Hexomate or something like that to scrape a URL, like a Google News URL, and I'll pull in, the 100 newest articles over the last 24 hours and, train my ChatGPT plugin that has access to that Google Sheet to read it every day, to sift through it all, and to tell me what I need to know in a way that I can best ingest that information and then communicate it to maybe, the audience that I'm trying to serve.
I love that. Well, it's all just tailored for you. And I love the idea of having a summary, like here's a 1-paragraph thing. So you always seem extremely up to date. And essentially you just used AI to do 99% of the work. And then you take the gem and you look super impressive. So I love that. That's excellent use of it. All right, let's do the third. What's the third top use that you think people could use to really understand the benefit of AI?
Yeah, and again, I know this is a cop-out, but I said I'd stick with ChatGPT the whole time, but business automation in general within ChatGPT is mind-blowing, right? Yeah, we can talk, there's a Zapier plugin, so if you've been around the block in marketing, you probably rely on Zapier like as a critical part of, whether you're providing marketing services for for clients or within a larger organization, like Zapier is a crutch, right? Like for better or worse, but the same thing, it's like, there's if this, then that. There's which just released a plugin recently inside ChatGPT. There's so much you can do with business automation in ChatGPT without ever leaving. I'm not saying, marketers or business owners should do it just because you can. But again, to be able to connect, even kind of like in that example, when you can connect, as an example, a spreadsheet to the internet, to a Google Doc, that is automating parts of your business. When you can, in ChatGPT, you have, you can enable 3 plugins on any chat. Don't think of, when you're using ChatGPT plugins as what one plugin am I going to enable to do this task? No, think like a smart marketer. I can almost guarantee 90% of the people who listen to this show use Zapier. So think of also ChatGPT and other Gen AI tools in the same way. How can you give within ChatGPT plugins access to multiple parts of your business operation? So, even I don't do this, but in the example that I gave, if I wanted to, I could take those recaps, right, that I talked about with all the AI news, and without doing anything else within ChatGPT, I could immediately post them to my website, post them to Medium, and post them on social media without doing a single thing, which is wild. Right? Like the amount of automation, especially when you tap in, Zapier or other automation plugins within ChatGPT, the opportunities are wild for marketers on what you can accomplish that used to take an entire team or multiple VAs, freelancers, contractors, whatever. You can program it once, get it right. I always suggest people like, hey, maybe you're not an expert in automation or data visualization, whatever. Hire someone to create a plugin solution for you within ChatGPT. You can share chats. There's an option for that. People don't know. And then you've got it. And then you can run it, every day or every week or whatever it is, but it's set up and it works and it's automated at that point.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and if anybody's wondering like, well, yeah, I'd love to automate these things, but I have no idea where to start, just ask ChatGPT, tell it the situation, and you could say, how do I automate this? And it'll literally give you a step-by-step guide to executing the plan. So don't worry. Just go on there, ask the system, and it'll tell you exactly what to do, what plugins and everything else. So that's huge. I think, well, in automation, it's just completely necessary because, I keep on telling people that, hey, because of AI, which, whether it's good or bad, whatever, we're going to be able to automate a lot of the paid media aspects that have really driven growth for all of businesses for the last 10, 15 years. Those things are getting automated, which means that any business pretty soon will be able to go online and run effective ad campaigns that will get them traffic. Unfortunately, it'll also drive the price of advertising up. So your business is going to have to get more efficient. And one of the principal ways to do that is through processes and automation, which AI does very, very well. So,
and just to get on the back end of that conversation, Mark, because I think it's important for marketers to understand this, is that we always have to be thinking 2 steps ahead, right? Because we know now that the quote unquote everyday person is starting to take advantage of this and to create marketing content at scale. So I think what's important for smart marketers right now, it's like, don't triple down on the amount of content that you're producing, because what's going to happen is, consumers are in this avalanche right now of mediocre content, because people that aren't fantastic at creating generative AI driven content, instead of upping their game, they're just creating 2x, 3x more. So you really have to be smart, and you have to say, not just how can I create more content through the use of generative AI tools, but how can I use it to create more relational content or more emotionally driven content, which ChatGPT can do. It can be creative. It can be, it can tap into emotions. You just really have to guide it. So that's one other thing that I'd love to say is people have to understand that consumers now more than ever are going to start tuning your messaging out quicker. So don't just use, some mediocre C+ content and think, now I can put this C+ content out 5 times a day instead of 5 times a week and put it on 20 channels instead of 2. Be smart with how you're spending your effort and the end message that you want to get out there to consumers.
Oh, I love that. Well, and just so everybody knows, if you want to not sound like ChatGPT and sound like you and say you need a LinkedIn post, just take your last 5 LinkedIn posts, plug it in, tell it to assess your style, and then it'll spit out stuff that sounds exactly like you and can be whatever emotion you want. Do this from a dark perspective. Do this from an optimistic perspective, and it'll tweak everything however you want and be as intelligent or as casual as you want it to be. So I think that was an excellent summary of those kind of 3 uses you could start today and have a huge impact on your business. And I would love to expand on those. So we'll definitely have you back soon to kind of talk about, the nuances. And like you told me before, you come out with 2 courses a week. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Every single week, we just teach people for free. We don't sell anything. We just say, hey, come, we'll teach you how to actually use a large language model, show you the basics of ChatGPT, basics of plugins, just because, it's, I think as marketers, especially, you have to understand the basics. And, people, again, they think of it as a shortcut, and it is that 20X you were talking about, Mark. Absolutely. But you got to get through the initial learning curve first.
Yeah, and get over the fear and just kind of embrace it. It's not trying to replace you. It doesn't care. Just use the tool. It's fine. You'll be okay. And you'll be way better, and everybody will really appreciate it. So thank you so much, Jordan. Where can people learn more about your podcast and all those free classes you're talking about?
Yeah, no, it's youreverydayai.com. So we do literally a daily live stream where people can ask questions of experts. People came on and they were asking Mark questions and he was answering them live, which I think is great. So we have the website, youreverydayai.com, the podcast live stream, and the course itself. It's called Prime Prompt Polish. So just at any time, go on the website, send me a message on LinkedIn, whatever, just say PPP, I'll send you the information.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jordan. Really appreciate your time. And we'll definitely have you back soon. Like I always tell people, I'm like, hey, we need content. So anytime you're interested, especially AI content, because we talk about that a ton. So we'll definitely have you back soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
All right. And thank you so much for listening. Be sure to hit that follow button so you get notified when all of our new episodes release. Please share this with that friend who's clueless about digital marketing. And don't forget to visit digitalmarketer.com, where you can access all of our courses, certifications, and training programs. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.